Hola, ¿qué tal, gente? Sean bienvenidos a un nuevo video en este su canal favorito de videojuegos. El día de hoy tenemos un gran invitado, nuestro amigo el Himus. ¿Cómo estás, Himus? Ya teníamos ganas de grabar Stanley Parable desde hace un rato. ¿Y qué crees? Que nos sacan la versión Ultra Deluxe Championship Turbo Edition X Platinum XD Gale of Darkness. Y pues qué mejor pretexto que tenerte aquí como víctima, como invitado al video. ¿Estás listo para la acción?
No sé realmente, pero pues ya que
¿No
es
sabes
parte del contrato.
¿No sabes a qué te atienes?
Un poquito.
Okay.
Sé cosas de narrador, decisiones que pueden jugar con tu mente.
Sí.
Más o menos eso.
Pues ya te enterarás que el final no es el final, no es el final. Luego lo vas a entender ahorita.
Vale.
Pero bueno, vamos a checarlo, a ver qué tal nos va. Y pues sí, a ver qué onda.
Sí. Vamos a ver.
Pues ya estamos aquí listos para la acción. Vamos a decirle que no, Himus, no has jugado Stanley Parable alguna vez.
No me deja elegir, Oscar, ya empezamos.
Maldita sea, le tienes que atinar, ni pedo. Debo decirte primero que en la versión original no venía eso del horario, ni tampoco, obviamente, si ya lo habías jugado antes o no.
O sea que debo de asustarme.
No sé, vamos a ver qué sale nuevo. Vamos a iniciar partido de madre.
Entonces, ustedes no vieron, pero le puse que nunca he jugado esta cosa.
Así es. Te pregunta al principio, supongo que para el contenido nuevo, no sé.
¿Te es placentero?
Sí, es de esas veces que te asomas por una pared mientras tu amigo está jugando así de...
Está a punto de ver What's in the Box.
Ándale, algo así.
¿Crees que tenga que configurar algo?
No, vámonos. Así.
Pues.
The end is never the end, is never the end, is never the end.
Ok.
Eso te va a hacer sentido después. ¿Qué expectativas tienes de esto?
Me siento un poquito como cuando iba a jugar Journey.
Okay.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
Se ve mucho más bonito.
Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
El sueño godín.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
No es cierto, se puso a ver los archivos.
Bueno.
Y un café, hombre.
Y cerró su puerta.
Sí, no pasa.
El juego original es de 2013 y estaba montado en el motor de Half-Life.
Ese lo usaron de base para muchos.
Sí, era como...
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Supongo que se me tardó de decir, idiota, no sabía que estaba...
No sabemos, Himus, tú juegas.
Es que imagínate si hago ver mal al narrador.
Nah, ¿cómo? Eso no se puede.
Fuck. So, como un poquito.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Me atrevo a decir que el 80% de la gente hace eso. No sé.
Es que cuando te dicen no presiones ese botón.
Como que te dicen,
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Ok,
Le mejoraron mucho la iluminación.
está chido.
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
No, vamos a hacer punks.
Bueno,
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
narrador es de las cosas más chidas. Tiene un humor bastante padre. ¿Alguna vez has jugado Portal?
Sí, de hecho te voy a decir que me recuerdo eso.
Simón.
Por cierto, qué joyas, Portal.
Sí,
Lo compré en 17 pesitos.
a gusto.
Look,
Nunca lo
Stanley,
he jugado
I
en
think perhaps
multiplayer.
we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her.
Me encanta.
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Qué precioso acento tiene ese vato.
Eh,
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
Ah, ¿cómo?
Se supone que con clic, ¿no? ¿O qué?
Ah, ahora sí. No estaba apuntando bien. Es que Stanley es estúpido.
Sí, bueno, no sigue instrucciones. Y pues fin, ¿te gustó? ¿Eh?
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your day.
Gotcha! Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife?
Cool.
They want to commit their life to you. I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
Esto es PT, ¿verdad?
Sí, va, por
This
eso.
is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
¿Qué?
Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
Me están poniendo a hacer lo que hace este vato.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
Y si imprimo otra cosa, no pasa nada.
La verdad no tengo idea.
No.
But in his mind, in his mind he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful, and each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him. And so he began to fantasize about his own job.
What the fuck?
First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Es tramposo porque es como de... este vato solo sigue órdenes. Ajá. Te ordeno que no sigas órdenes.
Sí.
Y no hay otra opción realmente.
Creo que no. Supongo que si te esperas un rato pasa algo, la neta no sé.
A ver, vamos a ver si dice... era tan idiota que no podía. No sé.
O tal vez ahí se quede el juego para siempre.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias.
Gracias, suscríbanse, síganos.
Vamos a ver.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley.
Está el reloj, mira.
We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried...
Ok.
Y pues fin. ¿Te gustó?
Ah, sí, claro. Profundo.
El fin nunca es el fin, nunca es el fin, nunca es el fin.
Oh, mira, Luxo.
Oh, sí.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Sin girar, papá.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Ahora sí. Oops.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
¿Qué?
El closet de las escobas.
No, es que lo leí como room closed. Y así como, what?
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
No entiendes, Stanley.
El infierno.
Así es. ¿Te acuerdas ese pasillo de PT donde se pone todo rojo de repente? Caminas en chinga.
Sí.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense.
Como los mayas.
And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled. "This is all a dream." Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up.
Ándale.
He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment and my wife and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Se me hace bien loco como de repente te ríes y luego es como what the
Stanley
fuck?
began
Luego...
screaming. Please, someone wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, And in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Eso no te lo esperabas.
No. No, según yo todo tenía que ver con esto.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
¿Entendiste el mapa?
Más o menos. Ya, con la mano, con la zurda.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his
Ni
left.
siquiera te dejé acabar, compadre.
Se va a enojar.
Ups.
Yet there was not a single person here
Tengo
either.
ciertas sensaciones.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Está bien loco porque cambia mucho de tono y como que no sabes qué está pasando.
Esto parece más como una mansión.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
¿Qué me han dicho? 45.
Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck.
¿Quién lo hubiera dicho?
He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
What the fuck, no veo nada.
Hay un botón ahí en el elevador.
Ah, pero quiero hacer una cosa.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Vamos a tener respuestas, dijimos.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Me da curiosidad de conocer todas las ramificaciones.
No tienes una pinche idea. Y según leí, digo, estamos jugando la versión Ultra Deluxe. La cantidad de contenido que agregaron, los creadores, por el mismo tipo de juego que no te quiero decir qué onda, no dijeron qué tanto le agregaron. Pero vi por ahí en algunos reviews que es básicamente el mismo contenido que ya tenías duplicado. Entonces, como que sí te trae muchas cosas nuevas.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Aparte hay unas ramificaciones bien pasadas de rosca, como muy específicas de hacer y con caminos muy largos.
O sea, si tienes que darle buen rato para explorar
Pues
todo.
sí, más o menos. De hecho, estoy a punto de sacar un logro en la versión anterior que te pide que dejes de jugarlo por 10 años. Salió en 2013, entonces ya casi justo.
No.
Sí.
Yo lo cumpliría, el problema es que luego no los empiezo, entonces. O sea, tengo juegos desde hace 10 años que no he
Ya
jugado.
ves.
Entonces...
Nomás ábrelo y ciérralo y en 10 años volvemos a grabar.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers, the lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Hay algo chistoso, ¿no? ¿Cuántas? 2.27. No, 4.27.
27. Arriba. No, ahí está.
Creí que iba a tener algo interesante.
Está oscurito.
Es el cuartito, ¿no? Donde empezaste.
Me encantan sus botones.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Qué bueno que dijiste que te gustaban los botones porque toda esa sala está llena.
Estaba viendo.
Y justo te iba a hacer un comentario de eso, pero creo que va a salir algo.
Pero bueno, eso pesa más. Probablemente sea esto acá. Esto se ve medio creepy.
Qué loco.
¿Quién se le ocurren estas cosas? Gente enferma.
Sí, qué onda. Te le ponen sonidos diferentes.
Es como comandos.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Me siento muy tentado a presionar el otro para ver qué demonios.
Sí, es lo que tiene, que luego dices, ay, no tomé este pasillo, déjalo doy otra vez, o no hice, o se me olvidó hacer esto.
Pero si el fin no es el fin.
Así es.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over?
Mira, al principio de nuevo.
Yes!
Eres libre, Stanley.
He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Creo que la primera vez que lo jugué no había notado lo mucho que cambia de tono. De repente se siente como feliz y de repente da como miedo. Luego te
Stanley
estás
felt the
zurrando de
cool
risa.
breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Estoy esperando una troleada.
No, mira,
sí,
beat the
beat the
game.
game. Okay.
Ya lo acabaste otra vez. ¿Cuántas llevas? ¿3? ¿2?
2, ¿no? Sí. Bueno, sí.
La del muerto en la calle. Esta.
A ver, vamos a dar.
La
All
de
of
la
his
esposa del
co-workers were
teléfono.
gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
Me
Perhaps he had
causa
simply missed a memo.
ciertas sensaciones como entre Seven, The Truman Show.
Ah, ándale, Truman Show.
Stranger Than
When
Fiction.
Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he
¿qué
entered the
más?
door on his left.
Matrix incluso de repente.
Ya.
No sé, como que me veo ahí como ciertas cosillas que
Yes,
sí,
there was
bueno.
not a single
A
person
mí esto
here either.
de que sientas
Feeling
esta
a wave
necesidad
of
como de salirte del
Stanley
script
decided to go
y
up
que
to
el
his
script
boss's
mismo te
office,
diga, ya sabía
hoping
que
he'd
ibas a
come
hacer
into a
esto, algo así.
staircase. Stanley
Como que,
walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Es que luego, bueno, lo pienso como a nivel algoritmo, como el considerar todas las ramificaciones.
Simón.
Stepping into his manager's
Y
office,
como que es muy
Stanley was
inherente,
once again
pues,
stunned to
eso
discover
de,
not
dicen,
an
no
indication
presiones el
of
botón,
any
pues lo voy a
human
presionar.
Sí,
life.
sí, sí.
What could it mean?
2,
Stanley
8, 4,
wondered
5,
aloud
2, 4, 8,
to
5.
nobody. He began wildly tearing through papers on the boss's desk, pulling books off the shelf. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
Luego pone como que me acuerdo que hay una canción de elevador por ahí en algún lado. Es como... Relax o
Feeling
visión.
soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly
Ah,
walked
bueno, te
forward
dio chance.
into the
Te iba a dejar ahí 10 minutos.
passageway.
Quiero ver qué pasa cuando tomo la salida.
Ok. Escapé.
Me da mucha curiosidad si realmente hay como un lore aquí. O sea, que realmente existe o que... Porque seguramente, aunque no lo haya, digamos, oficialmente, como, seguro que entre los fans...
Stanley walked
fácilmente-
straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control
Seguro alguien
Facility.
hizo un video de cómo se relaciona
Although
con el
this
final de
passageway
Evangelion.
had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
What the fuck?
The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Se cae. Ok. Va, vamos a probar un camino más. Ah, ok.
Espera.
Yo pensé
Sí parecía, pero creo que no. Vamos a ver las
As the
ventanas.
machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. And so he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Salta.
Éjele.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Ok. Ese toque de que sale otra voz está muy extraño. What the fuck?
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
El demo era algo como esto. No, ni siquiera tenía que ver tanto con el juego, era como si fuera burlándose de sí mismo de los demos y te ponían así como pruebas de los escenarios o no sé qué tontería. Tienes un botón de salto.
No que yo sepa. Oh.
Solitario.
Ok.
El árbol de decisiones va a estar bien loco. Me imagino así una cosa como esa más compleja. Y te digo, hay caminos que son muy largos. O sea, normalmente le meterás entre 5 y 10 minutos a cada como historiecita o no sé, como opción. Pero hay unas que sí, al menos unos 20 minutos de que están pasando cosas y cosas. Okay.
Un botonzote.
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me. You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let...
Ok.
¿Qué opinas?
Está bien chido. Que probablemente recorrer todo lo que se nos ocurre nos tomaría muchas horas.
No, y déjame te digo ya para cerrar con esto. Ahorita todo lo que estuviste haciendo fue seguir caminos, escoger opciones, pero hay cosas que te piden resetear el juego, hay cosas que te piden como glitchearlo. Y pequeño spoiler, avanza para allá. Está lejos.
All of his co-workers.
Esa, mira. Si le das input, se queda un cuadrito. Si llenas todos pasan cosas.
¿Y hay que reiniciarlo cada vez?
Sí.
Pero, o sea, ¿están en diferentes cuadros?
Están en diferentes compu. Pero sí, mira, si reinicias ahorita, te debe salir ya activado ese
okay.
Y siguen los demás.
What the fuck?
Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was.
Y eso es algo que a lo mejor no se te ocurre hacer.
Supongo que hay gente que le da muchas vueltas.
Sí.
Y lo descubre.
Okay, I think we all know the drill by now. Blah, blah, blah. Dark secrets, the keypad. Stanley pushes some buttons. Oh, hey, look, it's a new passageway. Kill some creeps.
No recuerdo si al checar todas las compus y ver que no hay ninguna lo tienes que resetear otra vez o está en otro lado, porque creo que ya no hay compus. No estoy seguro, la neta.
Vamos a ver. No puedo irme con la duda de esto.
Ahorita decidimos si se lo mostramos a la gente o no.
What could it mean? Stanley
No le
decided to go to the
arruinar
meeting room.
más.
Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
De hecho, los finales que estamos viendo hasta ahorita, la neta es que no son tanto spoilers, son como los lógicos, digamos, como los de cajón. Pero sí se pone bien loco de repente.
No hay compus en el camino de la derecha.
¿Sabes dónde hay una compu? Donde trabaja Stanley.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors,
Cierto. A lo mejor sí estoy...
Yo creo que esa va a ser el último input.
Sí.
Mira, qué óboles que...
No lo vieron.
Ya,
Lástima.
a ver si se alcanza a grabar. Y pues ahí lo tienen. Ya jugamos Stanley Parable. Sacamos que como 3, 4 finales, no sé.
Creo que 4.
Como 4, ¿qué te pareció?
Está bien loco.
¿Te dan ganas de seguirle?
Sí, me da curiosidad. De hecho, te lo comenté ahí que me da curiosidad saber si realmente hay como un lore ahí metido.
Seguramente ahí.
O no, o solo está medio sugerido.
No estoy seguro. Creo que se conecta. El final del pasto se conecta con la película de Justin Bieber.
Ok,
Que a su vez se conecta con The End of Evangelion del 98.
ok.
Ujú, y retoma a nosotros los nobles. Sí, ahí es donde te das cuenta, ¿no? Y dices,
Ya he visto que tal
ok.
vez con Tintán, pero creo que...
No, un poco, es que es un error común. Como tiene ciertas cosas referentes a su sombrero y la pluma, así como el Pacheco, pues sí. Como que te puedes ir por ese lado.
Pachuco, ¿no?
Sí, de Pachuco. Es igual.
Bueno,
es lo
sí.
mismo.
Muy implícito.
Muy bien, pues muchas gracias, Jimus, por haber
Gracias
venido
a
a
ti.
grabar. Y esperemos que les haya gustado este video. Recuerden suscribirse, compartirlo, comenten. Me gusta mucho ver comentarios. Que me llegan comentarios de una chica de Argentina.
Qué cool.
Saludos hasta allá. Y pues sí, no se pierdan más videos aquí.
Vayan a Mermelada de Mazmorra.
Vayan a
por favor.
Mermelada de Mazmorra, claro que sí, como no, con todo gusto. Suscríbanse, comenten, compartan. Ahí pónganos de qué quieren que hablemos. Hablamos de videojuegos, series, anime y películas. ¿Ya fuiste a ver El Norteño?
Todavía no.
Hay que irla a ver para hablar de ella. Pero
Sí.
bueno,
viene
Facebook,
Strange.
Twitter. Ya viene Strange, sí es cierto.
Vayan, vamos a hablar de Doctor Strange.
Sí, vayan para allá. Síganme en Twitter, Facebook, Instagram y si quieren apóyennos en Patreon. Y nos vemos la próxima. Bye.